Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Malik Yawmiddin, إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Well, I want to thank you for coming for this presentation. Dr. Jabrin and I were talking about this title, Past Glories and Current Realities, Saga of Dried Inkwells. So it's possible that my presentation will make some of you uncomfortable, and I don't apologize for that. I think it's about time we feel uncomfortable
Yes.
upon certain things that we have in our religion, culture associated with religion, and also, most importantly, about our history. And by our history, I mean Islamic history. So, I gave this talk, a modified version of this talk, about 5 years ago at Zayed University in Dubai. It's a women university. And after the talk, I was talking with the students, and the only conversation they wanted to have is how the Muslims have been badly treated by the Western powers. And every other student brought up the subject of colonial effects of colonialism on the population. So that subject is important to me. I think there was a lot of wrongs done under the colonial occupation, but that was about, depending upon which country we're talking about, 100 years, 150 years ago. Why the hell we are still in that quagmire after our colonial masters have left? So I reached out to this girl who was very vocal. And I leaned and I said, what prevents you today? What prevents you today to become the best student in this class and to top the university? Is anybody preventing you? There is no French and English and Dutch dictating as to what we should do. And of course, I wouldn't have an answer if I were in her place and she did not either. So let's go further. I have few premises of my talk. We Muslims, and we are not the only ones, by the way, we cherry pick history. We only glorify our tradition, those aspects of history which are positive. And we have a knee-jerk response. Somebody says something about an era in Islamic history, and we retaliate. We want to attack and retaliate. Knee-jerk response. And we all think that when we talk about the golden age of this and golden age of that everything from 1% to 100% was golden. But all that glitter may not be gold. We need to remember that. I think we ought to be proud of our history, but we should also develop a critical eye. So let me give you a glimpse of the golden age of Islamic civilization. The Abbasids, Abbasiya, their civilization, 750 to 1258. Fatimids in Egypt, 909 to 1171. Umayyads in Spain, 711 to 1492. And to some extent, Mughals in India, which was 1508 to 1857. So that when we talk about the golden age of Islamic civilization, it covers that area. It's a big time frame. And they really did something remarkable. What was accomplished in Spain or the Iberian Peninsula, which is Portugal and Spain, together called Iberian Peninsula, 1,000 years later, it still dazzles. It did something fantastic. And that's true of the other ones too. But let's move further. I will make my point, and then towards the end, I will come. I hope that we will have a convergence of all these views towards the end. A saying is attributed to the Prophet that the ink from the pen of a scholar is more sacred than the blood of a martyr. I want you to go and tell that to somebody in Afghanistan today, to the Taliban. Okay? Or tell somebody who believes in ISIS. So there was an emphasis on scholarship that Islam emphasized, and I will show you where in the Quran that emphasis is. But at one time, the Prophet said that the ink from the pen of a scholar is more sacred. How profound a saying about elevating the level of the scholars and scholarship in a society. And today there is a macabre reversal of the blood of a martyr is more sacred. So when our ink wells or ink pots were not dry, and hence that second part of my title, that saga of the dry ink wells. The question arises, did Islamic culture affect the course of scientific history? And if it did, what were the reasons? Why did Islamic culture and Islam per se, religion, affected the course of scientific history of the world? And if it did, what were the reasons? Let's look at a global view of the history. There was a book published in 1945 by George Sarton, and it was Introduction to the History of Science, 3 volume. And he broke the history of science into 50-year blocks for the sake of convenience. Of course, there was a little bit overlap, but he broke that, the whole length of that, the trajectory of the history of science in the world into a 50-year blocks. So far, from 500 to 250 before the Common Era, before Christ, there was the age of Plato, age of ages, Aristotle, Euclid, Archimedes. And if we go next, and now we are in 750 Common Era, look at all the names. They're all Arab Muslim names. The age of Jabir or Sami, Razi, Al-Razi, the age of Masudi, the age of Abu al-Wafa, the age of al-Biruni, the age of Khayyam. Those are the names which dominated from 750 to 1100 of the Common Era. There must be a reason. Why? Now the Muslims have dominated. And now, come to the third part. After 1100, Western names start to appear. But for 250 years, we see Muslim names as well. In other words, Muslims did not cease to produce, did not cease to bring forth the scholarship. And in that period, we have Ibn Rushd, Nasruddin, Ibn Nafisa, and Ibn Nafis, and many others. Let me show you a painting which probably some of you have seen it. This is a beautiful fresco done by Raphael. It's in the Vatican. And in this fresco, what he has done is that he has brought the philosophers over the period of 300 or 350 years and put them in one place as if they were contemporaries. They weren't. But when you look at it, can you turn that light off too? I'm sorry. That glare takes away from the painting. This is called School of Athens, the painting done by Raphael. Now, I still have that light, which, if I were on Gunsmoke, I would take care of it right now. Bam! The light will be gone. That's good, thank you. Okay. So here is Aristotle and Galen, all the philosophers, and here is Pythagoras, Aragenes. All he put them in one, but I want you to concentrate on this figure. The person with the mustache. He is Ibn Rushd, a Muslim philosopher, mathematician, surgeon, astronomer, you name it. He was a Hakim in the real sense of the word. And Raphael, most of them, all of them are Westerns. There is one Muslim, be sure on that one. Not because there was a compliance with the diversity at that time, but his scholarship was overwhelming. So I will come to Ibn Rushd later as to what happened to him. But this is a beautiful painting. It is about from the 13th century, Raphael. So let's take a peek into the Quran. 750 verses, 1/8 of the text emphasizes study nature, reflect, use reason, acquire knowledge as part of community's life. Just think about it. Acquire knowledge as part of a community's life. You are not going to do PhD only for yourself. You are going to do it for the sake of your community and add to the community. What a profound concept is that. And of course, reflect and use reason and all that. We are all aware of it. So, Quran's topics and their frequency. Physical and material, 26%. Ideology and schools of thought, 24%. Society and politics, 22%. History and philosophy of history, 14%. Morals, 3%. Financial matters, 3%. And rituals, 1.7%. So rituals are not very much on top. So if we just emphasize on rituals only, we are also forgetting what other things the Quran has been saying and taught. Now, let me couple this with a hadith. Seek knowledge from cradle to grave. In other words, just because I retired as a surgeon does not mean that I should just sit in a rocking chair and the hell with everything else. No, I am being charged to continue to grow, to seek knowledge from cradle to grave. And the men of knowledge are the inheritors of the Prophet. It did not say the people who go on jihad become the inheritors of the Prophet. Again, the same thing we talk about is the blood of a martyr and the ink from a scholar's pen. The men of knowledge are the inheritors of the Prophet. Muslims have done a lot of discoveries in their time, and I picked only about 10 from a list of probably 100. Surgery. Al-Zahrawi, that was 1,000, the year of 1,000 in the Common Era. 1,500-page illustrated encyclopedia that was used for 500 years. He was the first one to do C-section. Coffee came from the Muslim background. In Yemen, when people used to pray and the students used to study, they will have the coffee beans. They found that they gave them uh, alertness. So when that gentleman with a donkey in Colombia who goes up the mountain and gets the coffee beans, no, he's about 1,000 years too late. So coffee came from there. Flying machine, Abbas ibn Farnas. His machine stayed up for a few minutes in Cordoba. That antedates what happened in Dayton and in North Carolina on the flats of the Wright brothers. Antedated. The establishment of university was done in 859 by Princess Fatima al-Faridi in Fez, Morocco. And this was a degree-giving university. Algebra, 9th century Iran, Kitab al-Jabr wal-Muqabala, the Kitab reasoning and balance. Optics, 11th century Al-Haytham, who directly contradicted Euclid and Ptolemy because they thought that the source of light was from the eye going out. And Haytham said, no, the source is outside, and that enables us to see. There was a total contradiction of what was believed at that time. Music, lute and rahab. Now, I am tired of people telling me music is haram. I mean, look at the long history. Toothbrush. Who was the first one who started using maswak? The Prophet. A twig from a tree, a special tree, to clean your teeth. That ideal of oral hygiene also originated from that. The crank, you have different cranks, mechanisms, and machines. That came from the Muslim background. And there are so many others. I just wanted to give you a few. So there is a perennial struggle, and it's common to all faiths, is between orthodoxy and modernity. And let me tell you the fate of some well-known Muslim physicians and scholars. What happened to them? Yaqub al-Kindi, Ibn Rushd, I showed you the picture of that. Ibn Sina, the famous Avicenna or Ibn Sina. Abu Bakr al-Razi, Abu Musa, Jabir ibn Hayyan. What happened to them? We glorify them today, and even the most orthodox will tell you, Muslims will tell you, that we had great physicians and great scholars and great this and great that and great that. And if they came today here, they will be labeled kafir and non-believers. From a distance, everything looks good. But I want to take you into as to what happened to these people. Okay, here is the collage of these people. Al-Kindi on your left. Next to him in the middle is Ibn Rushd. Next to him is Al-Razi, that's close to me. And the bottom two, Al-Razi and Ibn Hayyan. I picked only 5. A list is very long. So what happened to him? What happened to them? Yaqub al-Kindi was persecuted and beaten on the orders of Caliph al-Mutawakkil and his library confiscated because of his unorthodox views at that time. Ibn Rushd fell from grace because of his political views. Caliph Abu Yusuf Yaqub turned against him to appease orthodox ulama of Maliki persuasion. Ibn Sina was called a heretic and a non-believer by the religious ulama, socially ostracized, and that led him to frequently travel and change places. Al-Razi went blind as a result of a blow to his head by his patron Mansur ibn Ishaq, who demanded the proof of his alchemy theories. At that time, The philosophers and the learned men had many theories, and some of them came true, and some of them did not come true. One story is about Al-Razi, that his book of Al-Kimya, it was the Caliph ordered that hit him with his own book on the head to the point where either his head bursts or the book becomes tattered. So, these are the tarnished aspects of the golden history. Jabir bin Hayyan was persecuted for his Shia religious philosophy, and Jabir bin Hayyan was none other than a student of Imam Jafar Sadiq, sixth Imam of Shia. Let's come to the Imams who established madahib within Islam. Imam Jafar Sadiq, the sixth Imam of Shias, 700 of the Common Era, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Hanbal. These are the four, the bottom four are the one which are the founders of the Sunni schools of jurisprudence. And all over the world, you can see whole swaths of lands, people who either are Maliki, or Shafi'i, or Hanbali, or Hanafi. Those madahib takes their name after them. So, are you going to ask me what happened to them? Oh, I'm glad you did. I'm going to tell you what happened to them. Imam Jafar Sadiq suffered under Sunni Umayyads as well the Shia Abbasids and in prison. The founder of one mother, Shia Imam. Imam Abu Hanifa promoted reason in legal rulings. Caliph al-Mansur accused him of lying. He wanted to appoint him as a judge. And Imam Abu Hanifa says, no, I am not worthy of being a judge. And the Khalifa says, you are lying. He says, well, if I'm lying, why do you want to have a lying judge? I mean, but he refused and he was persecuted, tortured in jail and poisoned. Imam Malik, dialogue between him and al-Mansur. Imam Malik wanted to send his codified book of Islamic law to all over the Islamic world. And he stood up to Khalifa and says, no, what I have given my reasoning is only for the local place, and it's not applicable to elsewhere in the Islamic world. He stood up to Khalifa. Imam Shafi'i was removed from governorship of Najran, which is in Yemen, and brought in chains before Harun al-Rashid. No, we glorify Harun al-Rashid, right? He was a great caliph and his wife Zubaida, and all those stories. Imam Hanbal, imprisoned in Baghdad due to doctrinal differences with Al-Muta'assim, Khalifa, ultimately banished from Baghdad. So these are what we as Muslims have done to the people we glorify today. At the time, they went through hard times, but they prevailed. And then I will mention two more names, and that is from the subcontinent, India and Pakistan, Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan and Allama Iqbal. Both were not persecuted, but really vilified by the Orthodox. Both of them. Let me change topic because I'm coming to a conclusion, and all these are different fragments of my argument. Nobel Prizes have been given since 1901, ultimate international recognition of excellence. 700 individuals and 20 organizations so far have received. Muslims have received a puny 13 Nobel Prizes. And if you take out the Peace Prize, which is maybe a soft prize, not like chemistry or physics or some of the hard sciences. So here's the list. Anwar al-Sadat, Peace. Abdul Salam, Physics, Pakistan. Actually, in Pakistan, many people don't consider them Muslims. If you take them out, we have only 12. Yasser Arafat, Najib Mahfouz, writer, Egyptian in literature. Ahmad Zubair, who died last year, I think. He was Egyptian, chemistry. Then there are 3 Peace Awards, and 4, and then Orhan Pamuk, Turkish, literature, Aziz Senko, who's Turkish in chemistry, and 1 more literature from Tanzania. Muslims are 1.6 billion in the world. So I asked, what happened? I mean, what happened? Oh, we can blame the colonists, we can blame this, and we can blame that. But where is the scholarship? Why are our 8 wells, 8 parts gone dry? And also, most of them who received, the Muslims who received the science, the hard sciences awards, work in the West. They did not work in the East, out in their home countries. Actually, they were shunned in the home countries. Abdul Salam was refused a senior lecturership in my hometown, University of Peshawar. A senior lecturership was refused. He went to Imperial College London, and there he established himself. And then 3 people received Nobel Prize at that in 1979. He was one of them. And in Italy, he gave the money and established an institute for third world scientists. Interesting. Institute of Physics. But we don't think he was a Muslim. Similarly, others. So I have a simple solution. Very simple. And the solution is that we need education, education, education. What kind of education? Education with a reason, education with a purpose, and education with a goal. Now, if you go to Pakistan, you will see that there are hundreds and thousands of madrasas churning out young men. They have no idea what the world is, and dare I say, they have no idea what the Quran says about education. But they come out and they lead the nation. To me, they are not educated, because if I take the definition of knowledge and education from the Quran, that is at variance to what they teach in the madrasas. Food for thought. If we take credit for myriad achievements of Muslims of yesteryear, then we must make them our ideals. Right? Ibn Sina and all those were our ideals. They did something fantastic. So would the likes of the Imams of yore or the Islamic scholars of medieval times survive in today's xenophobic climate? I mentioned this earlier. No, they will be persecuted. But here is the contradiction. On the one hand, we glorify them. But if they happen to come today, we will persecute them. That's our contradiction in our psyche. I would think that if Sir Sayyid would come today in Pakistan, particularly in Pakistan, or even Iqbal, probably will not fare well because of orthodox attitude which are prevailed. So there is a word which most orthodox ulama do not want to touch it. And that is ijtihad. What is it then? It's an Arabic word, which means interpretation of religion according to prevailing times. And if you look back at all the philosophers and all the Imams who established Madhab, they did it there. So much so that the second Caliph, Umar, did it there. There is a clear writing in the Quran that you will, whenever there is a male ghanima, the bounty of war which comes, you will share that with the people. And even those people who are not Muslim, invite them to religion and share with them. Umar said, no, we have now an ummah, we have now a community, and it's not relevant. So he went against that. Was he wrong? Was he right? Nobody wants to talk about that. But he did that. Now, so if the other people in the history have done ijtihad, why then and not now? And if not now, then when? Can we? But the problem was about 1,000 years ago, they shut the doors on ijtihad. And the reason was valid, that if you let everybody start changing and bringing interpretation and all that, it becomes a bid'ah rather than a jiddah. So they have different layers where the community and after community, the ulama, and different levels of ulama, they can do that. I say good luck to have that kind of a gathering. It cannot happen, it will not happen. But it did happen and happened frequently. So there is a quote from George Orwell. As soon as certain topics are raised, concrete melts into abstract and no one seems able to think of turns of speech that are not hackneyed. Prose consists less and less of words chosen for the sake of their meaning and more of phrases stacked together like the section of a prefabricated henhouse. Now, think for a moment. You have listened to all the khutbahs every Friday. Many of you are here on that. Have you ever, probably you have, but I'm just making a rhetorical point. Have you ever had somebody talk of contemporary issues in the light of Islam? No. We go up and talk about the Badr and other battles, which are important. But the current problems facing Muslims are never or seldom ever addressed from the member. Why? Why can't they? Why can't we accept that there is a shelter for the Muslim women in Chicago? The women have been kicked out of their homes. Why can't we talk about that? Why do we hide? Why honor killing is still prevalent in much of the Islamic world? These are the issues we need to tackle in the light of the Quran and Hadith. So the key to their success of those scholars that I mentioned, ijtihad with sincerity, conviction, and knowledge. I cannot just go ahead having a superficial knowledge and say, well, this is wrong, this is right. It has to be done with conviction, with knowledge, sincerity. The same door, and please pay attention to this, the same door that made and spawned Muslims and Arab civilization needs to be reopened. Why would our ulama talk about it? I was having lunch with one many years ago, one scholar Imam slash scholar, and I brought up the subject. So why can't you, as a leader, talk about these things? He said, you want me to get killed? Because they say that, at least in the Latin America, but in Pakistan and other Arab countries, if you break new ground in religious thinking, in the light of the Quran and Sunnah, you are digging your own grave. And we've seen that time and time again. So if we don't do that, if we don't bring fresh scholarship, if we don't refill our inkwells, it's not going to help. Now, Maurice Maeterlinck was a Belgian philosopher and writer, Nobel Prize in Literature in 1910. He said that wonderful thing. At every crossroad to the future, tradition has placed 10,000 men to guard the West. So we have a problem to skirt these 10,000 men and get to somewhere. I think this is the responsibility of our leaders, our religious leaders, to think in those terms, but we don't. And before we say that, I want to show you only one more slides. So, to me, Muslim Ummah is just like that. Standing by a small track of railroad, hoping the train will come. So I will leave it up to your wild imagination if the train will come or not. No, it ain't coming. We need to link this track with other tracks. And I have not seen in America or Canada people who have been in the forefront of doing ijtihad, and the people who have done that, they have been severely reprimanded and persecuted. And one was, I think he was from Egypt, Khalid, he was a professor. I forget his full name. Maybe some of you can help me.
Is it Abu Zayd?
Hmm?
Abu Zayd?
Abu Zayd.
Abu Zayd.
Khalid Abu Zayd?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Imagine in America, he was threatened. So that's the end of my presentation. And if you can please turn the lights on, we can have a little conversation.
So I don't know how it is in the Arab world. I think it is pretty similar, but in Pakistan, as you know, the sad part is all economics, it's all money. Because parents, child is born, child grows up, and they are Pakistanis, of course, are very vested into that my child must become a doctor. So the options of professions are medicine, law, engineering, accounting for men, and medicine and teaching for women. So unfortunately the people who are the lowest achievers and people who are orphans, where are madrasas from? Madrasas provide education.
Can you turn other lights on too, please, somebody? I don't know how to turn them on. Please.
So madrasas in Pakistan provide education for orphans and people of low means, and they do not teach secular sciences at all. So that is a real issue, that the people who then become our ulama and our alleged scholars are people who have, unfortunately, they're the lowest achievers and they have the lowest IQ. So we've given our mazhab in the hands of them.
Yes. So I have Majabin is very right, saying, thank you, that in Pakistan and in other Muslim countries, the emphasis
for the children to become doctors and all that. So there is a philosophical debate which goes on in the field of medicine as to when does embryo become viable. I mean, this has been going on. In Pakistan and other Muslim countries, embryo becomes viable when he or she becomes a doctor. Yeah, that's the definition. Any other comments? Your father takes precedent over you.
Well, first of all, I enjoyed your talk. Since I sit in Iqbal class, I learned a few things from my classmates. Iqbal, as you know, connects past with the present. He died probably like 100 years ago. So he said a few things about the same topic, more or less. As you know, his main philosophy is that of Hudi, which is simply put to develop your character, so that you depend on nobody but yourself. So in that light, he said a couple of couplets which came to my mind that I thought I might mention. I may not be proper or perfect on the words the way he put them, but that's what came to my mind. So the first one is, and if you don't mind, you might translate it in English. The first couplet is, Tujhe apne Abba se, Abba are the forefather. Tujhe apne Abba se nisbat ho nahi sakti. So Iqbal, as you know, he was very blunt. I mean, knowing his audience, he thought if you are not, then the message is not going to get across. So he would say it as if he's looking into your eyes and tell you how bad you are. That's how the poetry comes out. I never met it. तुझे अपने आबा से निस्बत हो नहीं सकती कि तू गुफ्तार वो किरदार तू साबित वो सैयारा. So we are comparing ourselves with them. So we have to know how they were and how we are. वो गुफ्तार कि तू गुफ्तार वो किरदार. They were men of action. They did nothing stopped them. They just kept going from one place to another, doing things. Whereas we are happy where we are because we are in the process of having a pension plan so that we can retire and go to Florida and sit on the beach. So
Which is not a sin.
Not a sin, but the Ummah is not.
I was there recently, so please.
So we talk, but we are all after pension plans. Let's be honest, We came to this country basically to have money. Let's be honest. Some of us maybe for some other reason, persecution and all that, and some of us, went out to become a better doctor. I don't blame them. I don't criticize everybody, but to submit was sayyara. Okay, we are sayyara, but for what reason? To what goal? I think that there is a problem. And as you know, when a man talks, he has so many things on his mind that he puts it into few words. But let me give you the other one. And this is direct to Muslims. वो मौजज़ थे ज़माने में मुसलमान होकर. And that's a broad term, Musliman. We think Musliman is to say La ilaha illallah and Muhammadur Rasulullah. We think that's it. We are now Muslim. वो मौजज़ थे. They gain respect of the fellow human beings at their times. वो मौजज़ थे ज़माने में मुसलमान होकर. Musliman to him was a man of character and do right things. And if somebody is in trouble, go and help him. If somebody is oppressor, break his arm. Now so much is going on all over the world, where oppression is going on even this day and age. Not a single Muslim country, and from what I know, not a single Muslim has stood up to defend them. वो मुअज़्ज़ज़ थे, they, our forefathers, ज़माने में मुसलमान होकर, men of action, men of character. हम ख्वार हुए तारिक कुरान होकर. हम ख्वार हुए, we are humiliated, left with nothing, तारिक कुरान होकर, because we abandoned Quran. The principles of the Quran is what gave them the leadership. The people from Arab land, Arab Peninsula, they were so far backward, historically speaking, that some nations will not even go there, even bother even to talk about them. For the first time and in the time of Umar, the Muslims, when they invaded Iran, the Iranians lost the war, obviously to Muslims, because Muslim army were much stronger. So their general was captured and he was asked, how come you lost your war? He said, when we fought previous in our wars with other people, we would fight between an army to an army, and we were very strong, and we beat them up very easily. When we fought war with Muslims, now we were not only fighting a war with the Muslims, but we were fighting with their Allah as well. So Allah is not, just to believe in Allah. Allah is, to take what is written in Quran and make your character, make your personality, make a ummah. That is what we lost. Now your turn.
Well, I think my comment is just I've been doing a lot of reading on this subject, and I read about the Library of Alexandria. Anytime a book would come into the harbor, any books that they had on board had to be taken to the library so the scholars could copy it in Arabic. So they had it, so they would have it in their library. So complete storehouse of Plato and Aristotle and Euclid, and the scholars would sit there and they would ponder it and they would read it. And it wasn't just their own writing, it was everything. And they were even during the Middle Ages when another book I was reading, the Middle Ages, they would take all the books from the, what do they call it, like the pagan world, and they would just erase them and write their own religious texts. But the Muslim world kept on to those. So they held on to Plato and Aristotle and the Greek texts, and they studied them and they and read them and really absorbed them, and then used that, applied their own Muslim principles to it. But where is that today? Why are we not reading other books today? Why are we not applying Islamic principles to that? That's a rhetorical question.
Where is, has anybody seen Waldo? Where is Waldo? I mean, Sophie, you're very right. That library in Alexandria was one of the most fabulous. When Halagu went to Baghdad, he burned the library, and then he put that in the river. And historians say that from the ink of those books, the waters of the, I think of the Tigris, right? Yeah. Tigris turned black. He put to sword not only the Caliph Mutasim. Was he Mutasim? Mutasim. Yeah. And 100,000 citizens of Baghdad, he put them to sword. But the historians still talk about not the Caliph and not the 100,000, but the library which was massacred. The library which was massacred by Halagu. So that has been our story. And of course, you ask a rhetorical question. And my whole presentation is based on facets of those historical questions. And of course, is that what happened to our inkwells? In my mind, we stopped doing ijtihad. I think it was a beautiful tool. One has been given to us, sanctioned to us, but the ulama came in between and they wouldn't allow it. And we are so scared of the authority of the ulama that if you raise a question, then it is not tolerated. Last week or last Sunday or Sunday before, I mentioned the name of Dr. T.O. Shanawaz. He was a thinker. He wrote 2 books, one on evolution and one on embryology. And he took ayahs from the Quran to prove a point. I remember when he went in to see the Imam, I wouldn't mention which Imam. And you remember T.O. Shanawaz was very soft-spoken gentleman. People from South India are very soft-spoken. People from North India, and I will not mention Nasser Khan, they are hot-tempered. They are hot-tempered. So he went and wanted the Imam to think about this one or two ayah where he found some clues, and the Imam says, "Are you going to talk about that monkeys were our ancestors?" No, no, that's not true. That's exactly the answer he was given. So, any other comments, questions?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for a beautiful lecture. What I would like to comment on is we cannot discard the damage that colonialism has impacted, not only on the Arab world, but the Muslim world in general. And the theory is that because of this intrusion into our society, and if you look at Northern Africa, for example, look at Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, you will find that the Arabic language was not even considered a language. They had to learn in French. I was raised in Beirut, Lebanon, and we spoke French and Arabic at the same time. So the French influence was there. The ideology of the Western world was there. It's telling us that we are backwards. And we were backwards at that time. At the time of colonialism, we were. And I think colonialism has scared the Muslim to a point where, I mean, it started in the year 1300, current era, the closing of Ijtihad. And the reason for that is because of the influx of Western ideology and the degradation of being Muslim and Islam. And that's one of the reasons that many scholars said, we're going to close the door of Ijtihad in order to make sure that there's no people coming and intruding on our faith and the way we practice our faith. That's what it started. I'm not saying it's an excuse, it's the reason, but it's the reason. We cannot really discard it. It's there.
Yeah. I agree with you, but I think we cannot make colonialism as the centerpiece of our failures forever.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, we cannot. I mean, look at what happened in India and Pakistan. Yeah. I was ashamed to wear shalwar kameez, which is the dress, Pakistan, when I was working there in the hospital. And I used to go make rounds in the evening in shalwar kameez, and I was told by the hospital administration that be properly dressed. I was refused service in a Peshawar club that Dr. Afridi knows. My wife and I, we were members when we lived there in the 70s. They wouldn't serve me while I was wearing a shalwar and kameez. 1970 or 71. My wife, on the other hand, an American, wore shalwar kameez. She was okay.
The women can wear anything, but the men have to be
Shalwar kameez.
colonial.
1947 and 1971, the ways of liberation had not entered that stoic colonial mindset. Any other questions or comments? Yes. Can you pass this back on, please?
So I want to thank you for the lecture because that was really nice. I appreciate it.
First of all, introduce yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Zachary. Hold on. Good to see you all again.
No, introduce your name.
Zachary Holaker.
Zachary.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm hard of hearing.
No problem.
Yeah.
So, I don't know a lot of the history, and I'm not as educated as a lot of you here on the history, but I think just as a forward-thinking person, as a Muslim that's new to Islam, I'm of course Western culture. I was raised Christian. I converted to Islam, but I'm just sitting thinking why our ink wells ran dry, and I think of your scholar that you talked to, and he said, he asked me to dig my own grave.
Yep.
He's scared, and so I'm just thinking that it's fear. Fear stops them. Where when we look at the greatest of our ummah, they were afraid of Allah. They weren't afraid of their grave. they welcome the grave. As long as they did right by the law, you've done right, and you can meet the grave with peace. So I would say, we have to get rid of the fear. We need to raise scholars that don't care if they offend. It's, like when I talk about Islam, I don't care if I offend you, as long as I can speak with truth. I say, Allah forgive me if I misspeak, but if I can show you in the Quran where it says this is wrong, then what can you say? And I don't care if that offends anyone, because then it's right, we're keeping on track. And sometimes we have to offend people, because if we let them run rampant and say whatever they want, then what are we doing right by Allah to let them? We're supposed to defend our ummah too. So I'm like, we just have to get rid of that, embrace more of a bold stance. Because growing up in a Western civilization, and when I was Christian, I didn't care if I offended anyone. They don't care if they offend you. So why would I care now that I'm a Muslim? I should care even more. Yeah, I don't care if I offend you. This is my ummah.
If you stay true to the teaching, I gave you examples of scholars, scientists, and philosophers, as well as the the founders of the four Sunni madhab and one Shia madhab. They stood for truth, right? And they went to jail. They were tortured, some of them, and they accepted that. So today, 1400 years later, we celebrate them. Right? So that philosophy has to come. And you're very right, people are afraid to voice their opinion.
But also to add to that, the beauty is, like here, we're in America. You're not going to be imprisoned and tortured, right?
No, you cannot. No, you won't.
We have protection. They never even dreamed.
Right.
So it's even funny that we're scared of that now. When that's not a reality.
Okay, the hour has struck 1:30, and that is our cutoff point. Usually, I talk to Saleh, and a speaker comes and he talks for about an hour and 15 minutes, and then he says, "Any questions?" He should have said that half an hour earlier, right? So 1:30, we'll go for Zohar. Thank you. Thank you all.